I think in lots of ways I work in places that are a wreck. I've started really to engage my interest in public art, which was sort of avocational as much as anything else, in the Western Pennsylvania coal country. And that's an environment in which we've been extracting coal without the regard to any sort of environmental consequences for a century. And the little towns and the peoples left behind in those places were part of what it was sort of my job to address. But what's happened since then is that I continue to work in places that are kind of the victims of resource extraction, and the peoples are the sort of peoples left behind after that extraction is done. I think in a lot of ways, my friend once said my resume looks like a group show at a gallery. I really started off as an historian. That's my formal training in the history of technology and economic history. I went from there to a National Park Service Historic Preservation Office that dealt with engineering and industrial sites. But I actually got a couple of National Endowment for the Arts fellowships to look at historic visual resources and the possibility of their survival in the landscape. And that kind of led me to a sense of what can I really do with history and a bunch of other disciplines, in fact, rather than just studying history. And I think my career ever since has been more about trying to fix things than it has to just study them. I went from historic preservation to the National Park Service office that dealt with all the cultural resource issues in the region. I went from there actually to the private sector and became a developer of historic properties, and really went to the dark side of historic preservation in a lot of ways. But it also gave me the opportunity to work with a range of different disciplines in the construction trades and a lot of other landscape architecture and whatever else, while still focused on historic resources. So I built an RV park in the middle of a National Historic Landmark and won the Governor's Design Award for doing so. It was sort of fun work. And then I went from there to working for a heritage area, which is really a federal, what are they called? They're an independent federal agency, very small. This was 10 counties in Western Pennsylvania. That was trying to kind of create some kind of economic redevelopment around a heritage base, largely because that's about all that's left in coal country is their heritage. And while working there and encountering all the consequences of coal, the orange streams from acid mine drainage, the kind of broken landscape and broken people, I sort of landed on some sort of effort. I called it the art thing for about 2 years because I just didn't know what else to call it, and I didn't want to define it more tightly than that. But an effort to sort of engage good science and good art in some kind of community reclamation work around this big and sort of emblematic problem of acid mine drainage that turned so many creeks orange all over Appalachia. For me, the arts are a way of engaging a much broader spectrum of the public. And in all the work I do, there's always a sort of public benefit presumed. Often public funds are involved. That was certainly the case with acid mine drainage treatment systems and anything that might accompany those. So I had to find ways to get beyond the science problem. You could fix all the water in Appalachia, and that would not fix Appalachia. So how do you get more people involved from different perspectives? And for me, artists bring a kind of curious public along with them that brings lots more people into the room, under the tent, if you will. And I think it gives a lot of people a much bigger sort of comfort zone. Arts can open that up a lot and still deal with the problem. So I've always said that that good science and good art are both necessary, neither sufficient. You can't do one well without the other. And if I have a sort of, I guess if I have a theme or a mission, is to sort of continue to try and prove that if you engage artists as equal partners with scientists in a reclamation project of any form, you get a much bigger result. You know, you can add 2 and 2 and get 7 rather than just 4. Enrich, I'd go for enrich. I think that for me, I'm always after how do we get the public or a visitor or a viewer or whatever you want to call them to sort of understand and then respect the place in which they're doing this viewing or this engagement. So it's really an interpretive problem for me, and artists enable me, an historian. I can't draw, I don't sing. And I find it a way of really engaging people in understanding by going after routes to that understanding that might not otherwise exist on a site. So we did a project in Vittendale. There was a big concrete pad that sort of overlooked, it was an old loading platform, and it overlooked most of the site and the community. So we actually put together an arts and humanities grant application and did 9 by 15 foot sort of mosaic interpretation of an old insurance map that depicted the site and the community and enables you to literally walk around on this map and see where things were and actually sort of link what you're looking at to an historic reality and begin to kind of understand that in ways that I don't think you would otherwise. And I could have, published a book about that, but nobody'd read it. If I put it on the site as a visually engaging piece, then I get more people sort of engaged. And that, to me, is the thing that the arts bring to a lot of this, is that a different kind of engagement, and often different kinds of people engaging. Here, or globally, or both?
From where you're sitting.
From where I'm sitting, I don't really, I worry a lot about global stuff, but I tend to think in ways that look at one project at a time. When I'm here at the Headlands, what I see as the biggest challenge is, we know what we need to do to sort of sustain life on this planet. I was here 11 years ago, and the practice in general of how everything's done here hasn't changed much. That can't go on. We know what we need to do environmentally in a great many areas. How do we do that artfully? How do we use the arts to really pull the Headlands forward in terms of its own development as an institution, as a place, as a complex of buildings, as a landscape? All of those sort of issues I see wrapped up into a huge challenge that, we all face, but here's a place. And the thing that I find sort of exciting about this is that the Headlands has been, in its day, a real center of innovative approaches. What they did in terms of historic preservation here when it started was way beyond the norm and set the bar for a lot of us that followed in terms of what we could get away with and how much more exciting it could be than just the kind of literal interpretation that most historic preservation takes. I think it would be really exciting to see the Headlands step forward and sort of take up the challenge of setting that bar in terms of ecology and the arts soon.